Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Nicole Robinson. I'm a pharmacist and a functional medicine practitioner with Synergy Chiropractic Center. Today I want to talk about Jane. First, I will say that Jane is not a real person, although I really do see very similar versions of her story every day. Jane could be any one of us, our mothers, our sisters, our cousins, our friends. Here is her story. Jane is a loving, caring, busy mom who suffers with anxiety. She works a demanding full-time job and she has 3 small kids in school. Jane finds meaning in her life, but a lot of times she just feels bogged down with the pressures of work and raising her kids and just trying to be the perfect wife, the head of the advisory board at church, coach of the volleyball team. She does it all. Jane gets to the point where she feels like she can't suffer in silence anymore, so she goes to her family doctor. They talk and she tells the doctor about her panic attacks, her feelings of anxiety, and her trouble sleeping. She gets a few blood tests done, but is told that everything looks good and is given a prescription for an anti-anxiety medication just to take as she needs it to calm her down. Jane never really considered herself to be an anxious person, but if that's what the doctor recommended, then it must be right. After a few weeks, Jane is reflecting and just thinking on how the medication is working and how she feels. She admits that the medication, it helps, it calms her down, but she doesn't like how it makes her feel. Jane thinks that maybe it's all in her head, but could her anxiety actually be worse now than when she started the medication? And what about all she's heard about this medication being addictive from some of her friends? Why didn't the doctor mention that? Something just doesn't feel right. So Jane decides to come see me, a functional medicine practitioner. Jane sits down in my office and we talk about her symptoms, and she asks me if there is any way to get her health back without being on medication for the rest of her life. So I tell her, I believe there is. We need to do some investigating and figure out what your body is telling you that it needs. So I ask her, Jane, what is your diet like? She says, pretty standard, I think. I really don't like vegetables, but I do eat a good amount of fruit. And I get all my grains in. I'm trying to stay away from Starbucks, but I just can't get through my day without a run or 2. Then I ask her, how many hours of sleep do you get every night? She says, I'm lucky if I get 5 to 6 hours. Between my kids and a mind that just won't shut off at night, that's really the best that I can do. Then I ask her, what's your self-care routine like? To which she quickly answers, what self-care routine? I try to work out every once in a while, but I'm just too tired most days. I listen to audiobooks sometimes when I'm doing dishes or cooking, but I get interrupted a lot with my kids. Then I ask her, what is your relationship like with your husband? And she says, oh, fine, I think. We haven't had a date night in months, but it's just so hard to find reliable babysitters. At the end of our long hour discussion, I have a good idea of what direction to go. Jane gets a specialty lab test done that will look at her adrenal function. The adrenal gland is in charge of the stress response. At her follow-up appointment, we talk about the lab results. Jane's adrenal test reveals that her cortisol, which is the main stress hormone, is actually 4 times that, what is considered normal. Now this could definitely explain her anxious feelings and her difficulty sleeping. So what do? Jane asks. We come up with a nutrition plan that involves cooking more of her own food and trying a coffee substitute in place of her afternoon caffeine run. We talk about areas of her life that she can clear to make more time for herself just to relax and be. And we come up with the plan to get her outside walking 3 afternoons a week. Jane comes up with a schedule to trade babysitting with a friend so that she can have carefree timelessness again with her husband once a month. And Jane does some research on her own and finds an organic herbal tea that promotes restful sleep that she wants to try to help her get more than her usual 5 hours. After 4 weeks of making changes, I check in with Jane to see how she's doing. She reports that the tea has helped her sleep a little longer and she isn't taking so long to fall asleep. She has also noticed that by decreasing her caffeine and cutting out processed food, she is not as anxious throughout the day. Jane hasn't been able to walk 3 times a week, but has at least been outside walking once a week. She does report that she had a date night with her husband, and they haven't laughed like that in so long. Jane tells me that the improvements were not overnight, but they were noticeable. She tells me she finally has hope that her future can be better without having to take medication for the rest of her life. Do you see the difference? In functional medicine, the symptoms are the body's way of telling you something is wrong. For Jane, she was going too hard. She wasn't taking time for herself, and she was just trying to be that Pinterest perfect mom. And I think a lot of us moms feel that pressure, but there is hope. You have options, and I encourage you to make informed decisions. Always. Thank you so much for watching and have a fantastic day.